Great, you're all very welcome, and it's really good to have this mix of Ger, you were mentioned there by Oisin, and then both Julia and Aaron were with us in 2013 and 2017 for Julia. So Julia, I'll just very briefly introduce co-founder of Easy City, which was set up in 2004, and more recently its US-based sister company, EZC Study Abroad. So Easy City runs internship programs for university students and graduates in Ireland, Spain and Italy, and provides relocation services to companies hiring in Ireland. So since 2004, the company has grown successfully with an experienced team across 5 offices in Europe and the US. Aaron is founder and CEO of the award-winning spice company Green Saffron, based in Middleton in Cork, working directly with partner firms in India. He's got a long association with us and participated in the 2013 Entrepreneur Experience. With his wife, Olive, his colleague Jas, he established Green Saffron from a market stall at Mahon Point to reflect the best of modern India, with a vision of one day acting as a European shop front window to Indian fresh spice. He has a newly established warehouse in Holland, from which he will start trading fresh spice to the UK and European processors. So 2021 is going to see an accelerated brand journey with an exciting pack design refresh, and NPD launches scheduled for Irish, UK and Dutch shelves. So watch this space. Jeremy has been with us through this whole journey over the last 10 years. He's an entrepreneur who's been involved in a number of successful technology startups, including being the founder of software business Engaged Technologies Group and its subsequent sale to Northgate Arinso, a FTSE 250 company. And also he was the co-founder of the networking systems integrator Bridgecom Group and its subsequent sale to Dennis O'Brien's ESAT Telecom. In more recent years, Ger has focused on helping established technology companies such as Action Point Technology Group and Voxpro to scale both in Irish and international markets. You're all very welcome. Just on that point, picking up from Oisin, Ger, talk to us about mentors. Do you have mentors as a seasoned and scaler of companies? And what do you feel about the importance of mentors as a mentor to emerging companies?
Okay, I suppose it's over 20 years since I got involved in my first startup, and at the time I had a mentor. He was actually the chairman of Post at the time, very experienced businessman, and chairman of various companies. And he had a wisdom that to this day I still value. Unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago, but I have such happy memories. And we asked him at the time to chair our board as well. So he kind of fulfilled 2 roles at the time. One as a mentor, and secondly as a non-exec chair of our board. And over the years, I would obviously like Oisin Kim's view. And I met Oisin for the first time in 2016. And he's just such a passionate guy about his business, about life, just a joy. And I've met him a couple of times since and talked to him various times. Just brilliant guy, and delighted to hear how his business is going. But to Oisin's point, I would subscribe to you, talk to different people, and different mentors, I suppose, have different insights. I wouldn't talk to too many. So I would think if you end up talking to too many people, I think the message might get confused. So you're better off picking 4 or 5, and with each one of them maybe having different strengths, different insights. Some might be somebody who might have a very good insight into the tech space. Another one might be, kind of pick 2. And also in the companies I've been involved in, I've always, I've initially been a mentor in the latter years in Voxpro and Action Point, but I'd always try to step away from that if I'm operationally involved in a business, because you can't actually mentor. You can mentor to some extent day to day, but I would ask the people, my co-founders and co-director shareholders, to actually seek out other mentors as well. So I think hopefully that answers the question.
It does. And I think, Julia, you've had some experience here as well. So maybe you can just talk to us about your story with mentors, and particularly in the more recent years.
Sure. So yeah, we've always had mentors. We've always in our company used mentors from pretty much from the start. And in the earlier days, it was more the kind of accelerator type programs and things like that we would have been on, and we would have had free mentoring through that. And then we found through those programs, we found, you know, a couple of mentors that we worked with thereafter privately. I think sometimes when you find a mentor that you click with, you really try and hang on to them, because it is a very personal journey as well. And Evie mentioned earlier this morning that, you know, their mentor that they've worked with for a long time has seen tears, has seen, you know, everything. And, you know, I could say the same. We worked with one private mentor for a number of years, maybe 7 years, 6 or 7 years. And yeah, he saw the good, the bad and the ugly for sure, you know, because that's part of it. I mean, it's a very personal journey when you're an entrepreneur, or when there's co-founders as well. So we did that throughout the years. And I think it's important in the start, because as founders, you could be a little bit distracted in the early days, because there's so much going on in terms of developing your product or service or hiring and all of these things. And so a mentor or a coach really helps to keep you on track. And then I think in later years, you might be at the point where you need to, I don't know, you may have reached some kind of a plateau or either a crossroads with your business. And I think that a mentor, especially one if you've worked with them for a number of years, knows you well, knows the co-founder well if there is one, and helps you to come back to your values, helps you to tap into, you know, your values, and that helps you then in your direction about which path to take next for the business. I think that's really important as well. And then, you know, peer groups along the way, you know, as a kind of an informal type of mentoring. I've been involved in peer groups, and I'm still involved in a peer group, and we speak regularly, and that's been really, really valuable, because that's kind of, you know, peer-to-peer support, learning from everybody else's experience. So that's really, really helpful. And I also think if you have a co-founder, some do, some don't, but that's probably your first mentor, because that's the person that you bounce everything off. That's your first day one mentor, is your co-founder. So much and all is, you know, you have good times and bad times. You can't deny that that's the person that, you know, you're going to bounce everything off probably first. So yeah, so it's been a long journey with mentoring, and I feel like it's also been very clear to me and noticeable to me if we took any break from mentoring, like if we stopped working with a coach for a while and we said, okay, we're going to take a break now for a while, we're focusing on things. I've seen a shift in the energy when we're working with a coach or a mentor, very, very clearly for me. So I think it's absolutely, it's worth doing. And I think that's been echoed by everybody today.
That's really interesting, that when you don't have your mentor on hand, that you miss it so much. I want to come to you, Aaron, because you're all about brand. So you might talk to us about the importance of that, and the value of the brand, and staying authentic, all those things that we heard from Tom and Niall earlier. So Aaron, if you'd
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like I think Johnny was saying there as well, like cash is king generally in a business. Well, for us as a business, absolutely cash is king, and for any business. But I always say that the brand is king, particularly for Green Saffron. All our activity must be to protect it. That's the intellectual property. Well, what we're building up in the company, the intellectual property, is beholden and held by the brand. And with a brand, obviously consumer facing, you have to make sure that you never let the consumer down, that you, well, from our perspective, we're always offering the best quality, the highest quality of anything we can possibly do, and the highest possible standards. So from a brand perspective, when I started, as you mentioned, I came over here with nothing to Ireland and started selling 2 sachets on a farmer's market just around the corner from Cork Wick there. And it's kind of grown from there, which has been a fantastic journey, and almost literally holding on to the coattails of it at times. But it's always been, I was in the music industry in London before that and developed various well-known bands and all that lovely stuff. But from a brand perspective, therefore, when I actually got back into, okay, let's get this thing working, let's see if we can actually make it work. We're very fortunate having, clearly, as we're saying here, Jer and Julia. I've had some fantastic mentors, not least Board Beer. And indeed, Dan Brown, now one of our current investors, is just absolutely keeping me on track. I tend to be a little bit wayward and go around the place a little bit, but Dan's always just making sure I just keep it simple, as has been said a lot this year. So from a brand perspective, I think it's once you know what your mission is, to have the vision, and indeed echoing what Johnny Walker was saying, it's just being resilient, just going for it and not trying to fall off the track, because if it's true, then it'll work. And it's just sticking at it and working hard to make it work. We have a unique proposition in the fact that we are trading literally with farmers. When I started 15 years ago, we had 7 farmers in Rajasthan and Gujarat. We now have 750, and we're now able to in commodity terms, sell around 3,000 tons of cumin and coriander this year. Well, not so much this year, but in the new season next year. So we are literally trading at farm level, knowing exactly where our ingredients comes from, making sure it's the best that goes into the jar or the sachet, the paste. And yeah, we've got an exciting journey ahead of us.
Great, thank you. Ger, I know culture is one of the things that we've talked a lot about before. And I know your view is that it's culture is what scales companies. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Julia, Aaron, and you, Eileen, and I had a chat the other day, and I tend to quote things occasionally, and I got a little bit of a fright before this call, because I said, geez, I've been quoting this for 10, 15 years, and the quote I have is that culture trumps strategy every time, and I keep saying it, and I realize I don't know where that comes from. Is there any basis for that quote? And there could be a couple of hundred people listening to this, and they say, oh, that's a lot of, I won't say, that's a lot of manure, right?
Come on now, Jared, defend yourself.
So this could be recorded, so I'm not going to go there anyway. Right? So I checked it out this morning, right? And it's Harvard Business Review. And I just read out the sentence, which I think is really relevant. The best strategic ideas mean nothing in isolation. If the strategy conflicts with how a group of people already believe, behave, or make decisions, it would fail. Okay? So there was actually a basis for what I was saying for the last 15 years. I just didn't realize it. And the other one,
I bet you're so relieved.
I'm so relieved, yeah. But Peter Drucker was quoted as well, and this came up in my Google. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Okay, yeah. Which I never knew that quote, so I'll be using that one in the future. Okay. So on a more serious note, for me, word culture doesn't come up a whole lot in startups, because you're a tightly knit group, normally a founder, co-founders, half a dozen people at most, and you're just mucking in, you're in the one room, everybody's communicating, everyone's aligned, because it's such a small group. But, and this is the but, as you scale, and in Boxbar, I remember at the time, there was maybe 100 people when I got involved, and it scaled over the next 5-6 years to a couple of thousand people. So it went up 20-fold. And what that means is that when you have 100 people, you have some chance. When you have 1,000 or 2,000 people, you have major issues, and the issues come about through communications. Is everyone aligned with the values of the company? So we heard about values earlier, and I loved, was it Olive or Evine was talking about kindness? Evine was talking about kindness. Yeah. That's the super value. The value I probably identify most with is tenacity, that you have an idea, there's a problem, you've identified the solution, and you come up with a solution, and you have the tenacity to see it through. But I love kindness, and look, there's lots of other values I'm sure we all have, integrity, innovation, there's a whole host of them, right? But if those values aren't understood by everybody in the company as it scales, if the vision is not understood by everybody in the company, what's the company about? Then, you know, I think you can't scale, and you can have a great strategy, but it goes back to the quote, you know, culture eats strategy for breakfast. You have to get your culture right. So your culture is critical. And what I've I listed out a couple of points this morning while I was listening to people. I've just listed 4 things in terms of helping with the culture, because as you scale, most of the time most companies don't have the experience of scaling. And this comes back to mentors. But aside from mentors, the things that I've used is psychometric testing. And psychometric testing gives you a chance to understand how your co-director shareholders, how your management team, what personality types they are, and how to communicate better with them. And I know Corpic have used that previously as well, Eileen. The second one is working on your vision, your mission statement, your values. Bring in an outside firm to help you with that. And we use a very good firm. We actually called it the Faith Lake Initiative because we took about 25 people in Action Point down to Faith Lake in Waterford for 2 days and got an outside firm to help us with, not that we didn't know what they were, but to communicate them properly and to just draw them out from us. The third point is that we use as the voice of the customer. Everything should be customer driven. So you shouldn't be, as a company, doing things in isolation. Your customer's voice needs to be captured and brought back into culture. And the last thing is, we talked about that, mentors, non-exec directors, all that type of stuff. So look, I probably rushed through a lot of things there, but that's a quick summary.
That's great. Thank you, Ger. I'd just like to finish with you, Julia, and if you would just share one of your great takeaways from the entrepreneur experience with us, which is about team.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, team and culture, we could talk about it all day long, because I feel very similarly to Ger on what he said there. It's so important, and I think it makes the difference between a very good company and an absolutely outstanding company. So it's not that you can't succeed without good culture, but it just trumps everything else. You're just way ahead of the game if you have culture at your core, I think, and good culture. In terms of the entrepreneur experience, we were talking about this before, and it's also one of the things that my co-founder took from the experience. The exact same thing. If I asked him, what he remembered from when we did it most, was being in one of the rooms in Ballymaloe, in one of the meetings, one of the sessions, and I think Pete was talking about it with one of the other seasoned entrepreneurs, and it was about, and we had a flip chart, and it was about creating your own crisis and what would happen, if you just create your own crisis, and the innovation that can come from it. And I think now, especially in this year that we're seeing so much crisis, I mean, we used to kind of laugh before and say, well, what would we do if the bottom fell out of our market completely? Sure, that would never happen, but okay, we're directly impacted by international travel. So that's what's happened this year. So, in creating that beforehand, it kind of spurs you on if you've gotten into any bit of a comfortable space, and you need to keep innovating to keep moving forward. So creating your own crisis, really, that was the kind of takeaway we took. I think it was even on the last day. And just looking around this year and seeing the amount of collaborations that are coming together between different businesses and what businesses are doing, when I look at some of them and think, wow, I would have just shut my doors for 6 months. This is too hard. And I just take so much inspiration from what some businesses, particularly hospitality businesses, food businesses, what they've turned it around to do in this situation has just been incredible. So I think, yeah, definitely creating our own crisis as we go along keeps us really sharp, and there's no harm in doing that.
I'd just like to thank you, Aaron, thank you, Julia, and thank you for some great takeaways there for our audience.